Hey everyone, Blake Lovell, Southeastern 14 here, here to talk about the games from Tuesday night in SEC basketball. Of course, one NCAA tournament game, one NIT game, but we will start with the NCAA tournament one because that was something. As Pitt defeats Mississippi State 60-59 in Dayton, the season ends for the Bulldogs 21-13 overall, but I think a disappointing outcome here for Mississippi State. I don't think there's any doubt about it because this was a game that was right there in their reach. And as you guys know, we talked about kind of the preview here, and we said, look, this, I think I actually may have said the phrase, this feels like a 60-58 type first four game, and it winds up being 60-59. So perhaps not that far off there, but you just kind of knew from the start this was going to be the kind of game that it was. Lots of back and forth play. Neither team really able to, extend a lead, and I think that just came down to lack of efficiency on offense. And that's just kind of what you expect sometimes in that first NCAA tournament game, especially in a neutral court environment, especially for a team like Mississippi State, who is not a great scoring team. That's just kind of what you thought it would play out that way. And I think both teams, the largest lead they had was 6 points. And I mean, this was I said it on Twitter, and some of you guys probably saw it, but the final play of the game to me just completely summed up Mississippi State's season. As we said going in, the worst shooting team in the country from three, 26.6% is what they finish now on the season. That's 363rd nationally out of 363 teams. And so it really was like it summed up the season to have a wide open 3-point shot, and they just could not make it to be able to advance in the NCAA tournament. And that's not something that I know I've seen some people saying, well, why would you, take that shot? Why are you even taking a three on the final possession? They had the tip in opportunity. And yes, you can say all those things, but boy, that again goes back to everything we talked about this season when it comes to Mississippi State, right? We've said when you remove one element of the game in this era in college basketball, and the one element is shooting, it just makes things so much harder. And that's why this game was such a grind for Mississippi State. Defensively, Pitt, I'm looking at the numbers here. Pitt went 12 of 35 from two. We said, if Pitt's going to win this game, they're probably going to have to do it from the 3-point line because that's where they get a lot of their points. They go 9 of 19 there. Blake Henson, Greg Elliott, Nelly Cummings all hit a pair of threes. So did Nike Savande hit threes. So, you just had that balance. And we talked about that with Pitt. They were a more scoring type team that would shoot threes. It was just a matter of would they knock them down against this Mississippi State team? And they did. And, they still wind up, winning by a single point. And, on the flip side of that, I mean, Mississippi State, I know, again, some of you guys probably saw it. I tweeted it out, but they started 4 of 5 from three in this game. And maybe I put the ultimate jinx on them, but they were 4 or 5 from three about 5 minutes into the game, and I'm thinking, what are we seeing here? Mississippi State is 4 or 5 from three, but you just knew the law of averages was going to bring that back to earth. And since that point, they started 4 or 5, they finished 6 of 23. So do the math. Um, you know that's just what happened. They couldn't really make threes consistently after that. So it was. I mean, it was everything kind of summed up in what we've said, and that's what we talked about. We said, look, if Mississippi State's going to make a run in this tournament, it's going to have to be playing these lower scoring games where it's just a full on grind and hope that you can get a shot to make a basket at the end to win it. And that's exactly how this played out. Like they had their shot at a basket to win it. In the end, they just could not make it, and that was kind of the story of the season. Just when they had those opportunities to either extend a lead, to take a lead in some of those close games, they just could not find enough offense to do it. And so give Pitt credit. I thought Pitt, remember Pitt played without their starting center, Federico did not play, yet they were still able to do some things. And I mean, look, Tolu Smith had 13 points and he had 8 rebounds, I think. But it certainly was not his best game. And, I think you just look at it again, just from the standpoint of, Davis, I thought hit some big shots. Moore stepped up and hit some shots. But yet again, it's just there was not enough offense across the board for Mississippi State. Dominated the glass. We talked about that. I think, we just expected it. We knew they were going to get extra opportunities. They had 18 offensive rebounds, but it's just converting that into points. And that has just been a challenge this season in terms of finding any sort of consistency on the offensive end of the floor. So, yeah, a disappointing exit, I think, for Mississippi State because it felt like a good draw. You guys heard us talk about it in the preview, and we did. We picked Mississippi State. We felt like it was a decent draw for them to be able to use their defense, for Tolu Smith to potentially have a big game. Of course, at the time, we weren't even talking about Federico's status. And so once you saw that, you thought, okay, well, maybe this is a real big opportunity here. But just did not turn out to be the case. And like I said, it was almost fitting how the game turned out because that was the story of the season. And you guys can go all the way back to the preview we did, our team by team previews heading into the season. We said, you remember the phrase, it was, this may be the worst shooting team in the SEC. And, it's a matter of how do they get points. And little did we know, that was going to extend beyond the SEC internationally. And yeah, it's just, we can play the what if game with a lot of teams, but with this team specifically, I think with how they defended, their ability on the boards, the size that they had, if they just had one guy that could consistently knock down shots from outside, who knows, right? We can play the what if game with any team, but who knows what Mississippi State, where they would be right now if that was the case. But just did not happen. And again, I think overall, and I put this out on Twitter too. I mean, I think overall, though, you have to be pleased with Chris Jance's first season there because I can't even remember where we picked him in the preseason. I know it had to be 10th or 11th at best in the SEC. I think we looked at the roster and said, man, beyond, Tolu Smith, it's a matter of seeing how they're going to score. And that, again, was kind of how everything turned out. But they got to the NCAA tournament, and I think that's a huge start for a new coaching staff, especially coming in. When you compared rosters, you didn't know exactly how this one was going to, pair up against others in the SEC, and yet they were still able to win some games. And I put this out on Twitter too. They did it just by leaning into their strengths. They leaned into defense. They leaned into their size and ability to rebound. And that got them as far as it could get them. But ultimately, it was just the lack of consistent offense and the lack of shooting that put them in this position to where they just could not pull out a game like this. That was a total grind, the way they wanted it. I mean, this was the kind of game I think Mississippi State wanted. They just could not put it all together, and only got to the free throw line 7 times. I'd have to look up the numbers, but I would have to believe that's on the lower end this season for Mississippi State. Because remember, there have been many times I feel like where Tolu Smith has gotten to the line, double digits by himself. As a team, they only get to the line 7 times. I think that's another thing that was an issue in this one, not to pick up some of those easy points, although who knows if they would have been easy because that's, again, another thing. They're 347th nationally in free throw percentage, only shooting 64.7%. So all the offensive numbers did not turn out in Mississippi State's favor, and turnovers as well. They turned it over 14 times, which, again, has also been a problem this season. So that was the name of the game for Mississippi State, not only in this game, but also throughout the season. So the Bulldogs finish up at 21-13. But like I said, I think a nice sort of foundation for Chris Jans to build on here moving into the future. So Pitt now advances on to play Iowa State. And now there are 7 SEC teams remaining in the field as of this recording. So we will, of course, talk about that here as we head into the opening first round games that take place on Thursday. So, all right, one other thing to discuss, of course, Vanderbilt in the NIT, they get the win over Yale 71-62. And I thought the Commodores came out, and again, I put this out, they looked like they wanted to be there. And that is, again, half the battle in the NIT is when you just get your team motivated enough. And you guys heard us talk about it in the NIT bracket reaction show that we did. I mean, I figured Jerry Stackhouse would have his guys ready. He'd have them motivated. That's a strength of his, I think, and his staff. They had them motivated. They came out ready to play. Yale made a run there. Vanderbilt was up, 17 at the end of the first half or something like that. It was in that range. I know they were up 17 at one point. Yale made a run, made it interesting in the second half, but ultimately too much Tyron Lawrence, too much Ezra Mannion, and Vanderbilt. Those two combined for 43 points in this game, by the way. And so, yeah, I think a nice start to the NIT for Vanderbilt because, like we said, it was just a matter of it's always a matter of motivation when it comes to this tournament. And I mean, we saw we saw some teams lose, right? Rutgers got beat by Hofstra in NIT play on Tuesday night, and so yeah, I think for Vanderbilt just to get a win like this, and of course, because of the seeding, it was announced wrong. They are actually the number 2 seed, as we confirmed before, and they will now play the number 3 seed Michigan, who beat Toledo in a pretty high scoring game. I think that was 90-80 on Tuesday night. So Vanderbilt hosts Michigan. So that's a very interesting matchup now, I think. That'll take place on Saturday. So Jerry Stackhouse versus Juwan Howard. There's a fun coaching storyline in that one. But again, good for Vanderbilt because, like we talked about, I know there are a lot of Vanderbilt fans who were upset that they not only did not make the tournament, but they weren't even necessarily that close when you just look at how maybe the seeding went. We're not among the first 4 out. And so I think this is not where they want to be. I understand that, but you do have to give credit to the players and the staff for getting up for a game like this. And as we said, we figured Yale would make things interesting. I mean, that's a team that pretty good in a lot of areas, as we talked about in sort of the other show we did. And it's just a matter of James Jones is a good coach, but just were they going to be able to come in, and what Vanderbilt team would they be getting? Well, they got the one that's done a lot of good things here as of late. And man, yeah, I said, I mean, Lawrence and Magnon, I mean, those guys are just they have been really good, obviously during the stretch for Vanderbilt. And um, you know, credit to them because they have been one of the, main reasons why they're even in this position to even be in the NIT, because they're, right there was a point where they're 10 and 12. You're thinking this team's not going to be anywhere near the postseason, but they've turned it around, as we all know, and now get ready to play Michigan, who another team who really, I'm sure, expected to be in the NCAA tournament at one point or another this season. And yet here they are battling, in a pretty, I mean, this is an interesting matchup. Now, I know everybody's attention will probably be on the NCAA tournament games on Saturday, but, I think this is an early 11 a.m. Central tip at Memorial Gym. So that's one to keep your eye on. It could be a fun game there in NIT play. So there you go. There's some thoughts on the Tuesday games in the SEC, and one NCAA tournament game, one NIT game. And, we got one game coming up on Wednesday. That's Florida and the NIT taking on UCF. And then, of course, the floodgates open on Thursday. As we said, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. The NCAA sure maybe did us a favor in terms of putting all the SEC games kind of staggered on Thursday. When you look at the start times, I think there's really only one significant overlap, and I think that is going to be the Thursday night games with Tennessee taking on Louisiana and Penn State and Texas A&M, which tip off about 15 minutes apart. Now, of course, we know those those times are very loosely set there, as it all depends on kind of where things are at and what happens in the games before them. So, yeah, lots of action on Thursday, as we know. Kentucky, the only SEC team that plays on Friday now, would have been Mississippi State had they won, but now we know it's just going to be Kentucky in the night game against Providence on Friday. Every other SEC team in action on Thursday. Alabama now knows its opponent, plays Texas A&M Corpus Christi, who beat SEMO. So the Tide will head into that one on Thursday. As we said, of course, you got Missouri against Utah State. You've got Auburn and Iowa, Arkansas, Illinois, Tennessee, Louisiana, Texas A&M, Penn State, and of course, as we said, Kentucky takes on Providence on Friday. So we've done previews for every game in the NCAA tournament SEC-wise, except for Alabama, because we did not know their opponent. We will do that at some point, though. And I know you're saying, wait a minute, you're going to preview the Alabama versus Texas A&M. Yes, we are, because that's what we do. We do everything here. We make sure it's all covered. So we will do an Alabama versus Texas A&M Corpus Christi preview here on the channel. So be sure to hit that subscribe button if you want that. But you can also get a lot more stuff. Go check out all the game previews we've already done for all the other NCAA tournament games involving SEC teams. And, of course, we're actually working on perhaps doing a live stream. I'm recording this on Wednesday morning. We're thinking about doing a live stream Wednesday night. It's going to depend on Chris's schedule. As you know, he's been traveling. So if we can pull that off, just look for it. Turn on notifications. That way you don't miss that. But I think we probably will try to do a live stream tonight, just kind of on the eve of the first round of the NCAA tournament. And, of course, football stuff, baseball stuff, it's all on the channel. So, again, hit that subscribe button. We appreciate your support. And, yes, tournament time is here. And as we saw, not off to a great start for the SEC in the NCAA tournament. Hopefully that changes on Thursday, because we would love to have more games to discuss heading into the weekend. So we'll see how it plays out. But again, we appreciate your support here, and we'll talk to you again soon here on Southeastern 14.